Alright, good day. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. This is Miss Flotus, and we're going to be doing one more lesson with me, and we're going to be talking about the Japanese internment camps that took place during World War II. Alright, so first and foremost, let's look how we got there, right? Let's go ahead and look at that. So how did we get there? So this really kind of took place after the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, right? Pearl Harbor, that is initially what launched the U.S. government to actually take action and declare war against Japan, thus officially having the U.S. officially enter World War II. Right? So the government feared attacks on what will happen actually on the U.S. soil. These fears continue to raise issues of possible presence of already enemy collaborators, i.e. spies or whatnot, living within the U.S. at this time. The government had determined whether their presence were threatened national security, and if so, what could they do about it? This is what we lead. And we also have these questions of, have we seen this kind of fear before? Think about the first Red Scare that we have today, that we've had, right, that took place after World War I. And who exactly were we afraid of that, right? So it's all these fears that we experienced before with the first Red Scare coming back in full force at this time. And in response to these fears, President Roosevelt signed the Executive Order of 9066 on February 19th, 1942. And this is kind of known as the Japanese Internment Act, right? So what this did is it relocated many people. About 120,000 Japanese Americans from the West Coast were first to leave their homes and businesses. Right? So many people lost their homes and businesses at this time. Most Japanese Americans were torn or confused about being forced to move. Right? They were ultimately U.S. citizens, but they were also proud of the Japanese heritage. So you had many people who were maybe first gen and immigrated, but then you also had their children that were second generation and were being forced to move at this time. And where they're moving is that they're moving to what we would call relocation camps, right? Certainly, so most of the hastily constructed camps were located in bleak desert areas. So you have some right here, you have Manzar, you have Boston, Gala, Topaz, Doka, Heart Mountain, Tula Lake. All these are places where they're pretty much desert, you guys. Right? And that's where you would have these internment camps, right? Families were crowded out together in these flimsy housings with no running water. Barbed wire and armed guards surrounded each camp, right? And one resident had recalled that we struggled with the heat, the sandstorms, the scorpions, the rattlesnakes, the confusion, the overcrowded barracks, and the lack of privacy. So this is what we see happening, where these internment camps are being located, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, essentially. And it's a real struggle for these people who are mainly living in big cities. We're now here. This is a photo that we see. The Grand Relocation Center is out in Colorado. So looking back in Colorado, this would be Granda, right? That's their main resource centers. And you also have a few over here in Arkansas, Ramon and Jerome as well. So these are the huge ones, right, that we see here. And here's photos that we see of, these are how many people live, right? So this is maybe what they would have for central heating. One big room, heater right here that would also be your cooking area. Again, most of these have no running water. So they would have to use bowls and pen tabs to clean their faces and whatnot. You had these barrack-like beds and where it's all cramped and laid up, and you can kind of see going off the frame right here, more beds along that wall as well. And here's a quote saying, at Minodoka, arriving, evacuees found 2 stacked canvases cots, a pot-belly stove, which is what we'll see right here, and a light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Rooms had no running water, which had to be carried from community facilities. So you basically present like big giant barrel of bucket that you would have to carry from this facility all the way back to your, I guess, cabin, is what you can call it. And commissions on wartime location and internment camps of civilians. This is what you see here. Commissions on wartime location, internment of civilians, and personal justice were all denied at this time period. So it's really was harsh, right? So life in the camps, though, some people did their best, right? So this is another quote that you have. Despite the starkness of the barracks, barrack apartments, evacuees did their best to give them homing touch and find a bit of privacy. So maybe you would have curtains hanging like you do here, have some privacy. They did go to school and whatnot, so the children were educated at this time. So like I said, schools were established. You had churches, centers were built. You also have newspapers were being printed, and even their own camp governments were formed within these camps. You even had many who went to war at this time. So despite the injustice of suffering by their families, over 16,000 young Japanese American men in the camps had volunteered for military service. And this is kind of a way of showing like we're not against the U.S., we're with you guys, and whatnot. And it also raises in question the whole constitutional thing. Like, was this even legal to do? The internment camps really did violate the Constitution in order to protect the U.S. From perceived threats. And it brings to the question of, is internment ever justified? Of this question. Eventually, the war did end, thus brought the ending of these camps too, though. So when they were closed and people went out and did their best to kind of build back their lives, but many people returned to their houses, their businesses, all vandalized or destroyed, and they were still facing racism when they went back. Many Japanese Americans still face racism when they went and tried to find jobs in their own new homes and whatnot. And they never received an apology for being put in these internment camps until about 40 years later, in 1988, Congress finally passed the legislation that they gave up $20,000 to every Japanese American who had been interned in the camps. In signing House Bill 442, Reagan said, "We are here to right a grave wrong. It is not for us to pass judgment on those who made mistakes." And yet the internment was just that, a mistake. The first payments were made to those 80s and older in 1990, and it was accompanied by a formal letter of apology. So this was what was going out, and they were paid out throughout that time period. And that is it for the Japanese internment camps. If you guys are interested in more topics or learning about more, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us teachers, and we'll be more than happy to help you guys, along with any help or concerns that you guys may have. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day, and good luck.